Whisper of the meadows, I was born in the early mist of a spring morning, with the air crisp and the sky painted in gentle hues of pink and amber. My mother, an elegant mare with a gleaming chestnut coat, nudged me softly as I first struggled to stand. Her voice was warm and steady, a comforting sound amidst the new world I found myself in. "You're strong, little one," she whispered, her eyes filled with gentle pride, "and you will need that strength." The farm where I began my life was nestled between rolling hills and bordered by a silver creek that sang as it wove through wildflower-dotted fields. It was a modest place, owned by a man called Mr. Fletcher, whose hands were rough but whose voice was always soft with the horses. To the people who worked there, the farm was known as Bracken Hill. To us, the horses, it was simply home. In those early days I felt nothing but the soft caress of the grass beneath my hooves, the tickle of my mother's whiskers, and the warmth of the sun on my back. I grew up alongside other young foals, my best companion being Misty, a spirited filly with a snow-white blaze on her nose. We'd race along the fence line, our hooves drumming a joyful rhythm, each step echoing with the promise of days unbound by burden or hardship. My name and my purpose. I was soon named Ember, for the fiery flecks in my dark brown coat. Mr. Fletcher seemed pleased with the choice, saying it matched the lively spark in my eyes. As I grew older, the humans began to speak of my purpose, and I came to understand that I was destined for a life beyond these peaceful meadows. Some whispered that I would make a fine carriage horse. Others said I had the build of a sturdy riding companion. All I knew was that the world seemed larger than the fields I had known, filled with possibilities I could not yet comprehend. My mother spoke often of our kind's enduring bond with humans, how we had shared their labors, joys, and even sorrows for generations. "Some of them can be cruel," she warned, her voice growing heavy with a distant sadness, "but many have hearts as big as the skies above. Learn to listen, Ember. Kindness always speaks clearly, if you're willing to hear it." Her words seemed wise, but I was too young then to truly understand their weight. I only knew that I was strong, swift, and eager to see more of the world beyond the familiar fences of Bracken Hill. Lessons of the meadows. Mr. Fletcher often came to the meadow with a pocket full of sugar cubes and carrots. "Steady, Ember," he'd say as he approached, holding out a treat. I learned to trust the sound of his footsteps, the worn leather of his boots crunching against the gravel path. He never raised his voice, and when he placed a hand on my neck, it was always firm but gentle. One spring morning, as the dew still clung to the grass, Mr. Fletcher brought along a stranger, a young man with eager eyes and quick hands. "This is Ethan," he said, "and he's here to help you learn a bit more about the world." Ethan's voice was cheerful, filled with an untested confidence. "You and I will get along just fine, won't we, Ember?" he asked, as if I might answer back. I sniffed at his outstretched hand, catching the scent of oats, and nodded slightly, my curiosity piqued. Training began slowly. Ethan's approach was gentle, just as Mr. Fletcher's had been. He introduced me to the weight of a saddle on my back, the feel of reins resting against my neck. At first, the leather straps felt foreign and restrictive, but Ethan was patient. With each small step, he allowed me to grow accustomed to this new reality. There were moments when the lessons felt too much, when the world seemed suddenly smaller under the constraints of the bit and bridle. During these times, my mind would wander back to the days when I had raced Misty through the meadows, untethered and wild. But then I would feel Ethan's hand, steady and reassuring, and I would remember my mother's words. Not all humans are cruel. Some, I began to suspect, might even understand the language of horses. The promise and the peril. One summer evening, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the paddock, I overheard a conversation between Mr. Fletcher and another man, this one dressed in polished riding boots and a sharp jacket. They spoke in hushed tones, but I caught fragments of their words. Promising young gelding, fine addition to the stables, good price. I didn't understand fully, but a sense of change hung in the air. Misty, who was now a young mare, nudged me as we stood in the fading light. "They say you might be leaving, Ember," she said softly. I met her gaze, unsure of how to respond. The world beyond Bracken Hill was no longer just an exciting possibility. It was a reality that was fast approaching. I could only hope that my new path would be paved with kindness, as my mother had once promised. But deep down, I knew that the world was unpredictable. The meadows had taught me to listen to the wind and the rustle of the leaves, to sense change before it arrived. And as the stars began to appear overhead, I sensed that my journey was just beginning, one that would test not only my strength but also the trust I had learned to place in humans. The road beckons. The morning arrived clear and bright, with a golden light spilling across Bracken Hill. I was grazing by the creek when Ethan approached, his expression more serious than usual. He had a rope halter in his hand, and his voice when he spoke was quieter than I had ever heard it. "It's time, Ember," he said, slipping the halter over my head. His touch was gentle, but there was a finality to his movements that made me pause. I nudged his arm, a gesture that had once earned me a pat or a soft chuckle. This time he merely sighed. I had felt this coming. Change had been in the air for days now, and the whispers between Mr. Fletcher and strangers had become more frequent. I had seen other horses leave the farm before, some eager and others hesitant, but I had never truly understood what it meant until now. The farm's big red truck waited by the gate, its trailer open and inviting in a way that felt both hopeful and unsettling. Ethan led me slowly up the ramp. "You're a good horse, Ember," he murmured as he secured the latch behind me. "A real good one." The doors closed with a metallic clank, and suddenly the world became small and confined, filled only with the rumble of the engine and the sway of the trailer. As the truck pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of Misty in the field, her white blaze glowing in the sunlight. She raised her head and whinnied, the sound sharp and urgent. I answered back, a mix of uncertainty and farewell in my call. A new place, new faces. The journey lasted for what felt like hours, the scenery changing from familiar meadows to busy roads lined with tall buildings and fences. The air smelled different, less of earth and grass, more of asphalt and smoke. I tried to keep steady, but the noise was overwhelming. Every honk, every screech of brakes sent a ripple of tension through me. When the truck finally stopped, the trailer doors swung open to reveal a wide yard surrounded by high wooden fences. It was not as open as Bracken Hill, but it was clean and well kept. I was led out by a stout man with a weathered face and firm hands. His name, I would soon learn, was Mr. Barrett, the new owner of this place. He examined me with a critical eye, running his hands along my neck and back. "Good muscle, strong legs," he muttered approvingly. "You'll make a fine addition to the stables." I looked around, trying to absorb this new world. There were other horses here, more than I'd seen at Bracken Hill. Some stood in stalls, watching me with mild interest. Others were in a large paddock nearby, their coats gleaming in the midday sun. One of them, a tall gray gelding with a noble bearing, approached the fence as I was led past. "New here, aren't you?" he asked, his voice deep and authoritative. "Yes," I replied, feeling a bit out of place. "I'm Ember." "Name's Sterling," he said. "This place isn't so bad once you get used to it. Just watch out for the red mare, she can be a bit touchy." I glanced over and saw the mare he was referring to, a sleek, fiery red horse with sharp, watchful eyes. She stood apart from the others, her ears flicking back and forth as if catching every sound. Lessons of the arena. My training began in earnest the next morning. This place was not like Bracken Hill, where learning had been gradual and filled with Ethan's easy laughter. Here, the lessons were structured and intense. Mr. Barrett's methods were more rigid. He demanded quick responses, sharp turns, and obedience. I was introduced to new equipment, heavier saddles, tighter reins, and sometimes even a crop, which stung and startled me the first time it made contact. At Bracken Hill, Ethan had never needed one. He had trained me with patience, using calm words and soft pats. Here, there was no room for hesitation. I was expected to move swiftly, to perform without question. It was Sterling who helped me adjust. Despite his stern exterior, he was a kind teacher, guiding me with quiet words of wisdom. "You'll be fine, Ember," he assured me one evening as we cooled down after a long day's work in the arena. "The trick is to stay focused, listen to the cues, and do your best. Most of the riders here are fair enough." And it was true. Most of the riders were not unkind. There was Helen, a young girl with a gentle touch, and Charles, an experienced horseman who spoke to me in a soothing tone. But there were others too, less patient and more demanding. They pulled at the reins harshly or used the crop without warning, leaving me confused and tense. One day, during a particularly grueling session, I stumbled during a sharp turn. The rider, a man with a hard face and little regard for my limits, jerked the reins hard, causing me to rear in panic. He struck me with the crop, his voice harsh. "Stay steady, you stupid horse." The words stung more than the crop, and I felt a mix of anger and frustration well up inside me. But then I remembered my mother's words. Kindness always speaks clearly. I couldn't let anger guide me. I had to endure. Echoes of kindness. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I found myself standing at the far end of the paddock, looking out at the world beyond the fence. It was strange to feel both confined and curious. My spirit was restless, yet my body was weary from the day's work. "Don't let them break you, Ember," came Sterling's voice from nearby. "There are good people here too, just as there were back home." I turned to look at him. his gray coat now soft in the twilight. "How do you know?" I asked, feeling a twinge of uncertainty. "How can you tell the good from the bad?" He paused, as if considering his answer carefully. "You learn to listen," he said finally. "Not just to their words, but to how they treat you when no one else is watching. The true measure of a person's heart is in the small moments." I pondered his words as the stars began to appear overhead, small pinpricks of light in the darkening sky. My journey had only just begun, but I was starting to understand that it was not just about strength or obedience. It was about learning whom to trust and how to remain true to myself amidst the noise and demands of this new world. Test of Spirit morning broke over the stable yard with a crisp chill, dew shimmering on the fence posts and turning the paddock into a field of glass. I woke to the familiar sounds of horses shifting in their stalls, soft snorts and shuffling hooves. But there was an unusual bustle in the air that morning. Stable hands hurried about with a sense of urgency, saddles were polished to a shine, and riders seemed more focused than usual. Sterling leaned over the partition of his stall, watching the activity with calm curiosity. "Looks like the annual show's coming up," he said casually. "What's that?" I asked, perking my ears forward. "It's the big event here," Sterling replied. "It's a chance to prove yourself. The humans bring in judges, and they watch us jump, perform, and show off our training." I'd never heard of such a thing back at Bracken Hill, where the most competition came from full races along the pasture fence. This seemed much more serious. "Do you compete?" I asked. "I have, but I'm older now," he said, his tone not regretful but resolute. "You, though, are in your prime. This could be a good chance to show them what you're made of." I wasn't sure if I felt excited or nervous, but a part of me wanted to prove something, not just to the humans but to myself. The first trial training for the show intensified over the next few days. Mr. Barrett was determined to see me compete in the jumper category. "He's got the right build, and he's quick on his feet," I heard him tell one of the stable hands. It was a compliment, I supposed, but I soon learned that it came with heavier expectations. The jumps were higher, the pace faster. Helen, the young rider with a soft touch, was given the task of preparing me. Her voice was always calm, and I appreciated the way she guided me with her body, not just the reins. "Easy, Ember," she'd say, her tone steady as I approached a series of jumps set in the middle of the arena. "Find your rhythm and lift." I tried my best to follow her cues, feeling my muscles strain as I cleared each jump. At first I stumbled a bit, my legs not quite sure of themselves, but Helen was patient, rewarding even the smallest successes with a gentle pat or a sugar cube from her pocket. Yet not everyone shared Helen's approach. One afternoon, as I prepared for a run, Mr. Barrett appeared at the edge of the arena, his face set with a mix of scrutiny and expectation. "Make him sharper," he called out to Helen. "No room for error." Helen nodded, though I sensed a trace of hesitation in her response. She tightened her grip on the reins, urging me to pick up speed. I obeyed, but the added pressure made my stride less fluid, more frantic. As I neared the final jump, my front hoof caught the edge of the rail, sending it tumbling to the ground. The sound echoed sharply, and I skidded to a halt, my breath coming in quick, uneasy bursts. "Again," Mr. Barrett ordered, his voice flat and unforgiving. We tried again and again, until my legs felt heavy and my breath came in ragged gasps. Each time I failed, the disappointment in Mr. Barrett's eyes was palpable, a weight I carried with each misstep. By the end of the day, I was exhausted, my spirit dampened. As Helen led me back to my stall, she stroked my neck, her voice low. "I'm sorry, Ember," she whispered. "You deserve better." I nuzzled her hand, grateful for the kindness but the day's failures lingered like a shadow in my mind. A rival emerges. It wasn't just the jumps I had to contend with, there was also another horse, a powerful bay stallion named Thunder, who had long been the pride of Mr. Barrett's stables. Thunder was a natural athlete, with a fierce competitive spirit and an aura of authority. The moment I arrived, he seemed to sense a potential challenge to his status. "You think you can keep up, Ember?" he asked one morning, his voice edged with amusement. "I've seen horses like you come and go. I'm here to do my best," I replied, trying to sound confident. Thunder snorted. "Just remember, the humans respect winners, not tryhards." It was meant to unsettle me, and it did. Thunder was everything I wasn't yet. He moved with an easy grace, his leaps over the jumps almost effortless. But there was something about his attitude that made me determined not to back down. I had my own fire, even if it was still finding its full strength. The rivalry fueled my efforts in training. I pushed myself harder, not just to win the approval of Mr. Barrett or even Helen, but to prove to Thunder that I was more than just a newcomer. The unexpected fall. As the day of the show approached, the stables buzzed with anticipation. Riders polished their gear, stable hands whispered predictions, and I could feel the tension in the air. I had started to feel a rhythm to my training, a balance between strength and agility that seemed to click at last. But on the eve of the show, disaster struck. We were practicing one final round of jumps when, midway through the course, I landed awkwardly, my hoof slipping on the damp grass. Pain shot through my leg, sharp and sudden, and I crumpled to the ground. I heard Helen's gasp, felt the panic in her hands as she rushed to my side. "Easy, Ember," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Just breathe." The stable hands came quickly, lifting me back to my feet. The pain in my leg throbbed, but I managed to stand. Mr. Barrett was there too, his expression a mix of frustration and concern. "Is he hurt?" he demanded, his voice tight. Helen ran her hands down my leg, her touch gentle but focused. "It's a sprain, I think. He needs rest." Mr. Barrett's face darkened. "He doesn't have time to rest. The show is tomorrow." "But he won't be able to perform at his best," Helen insisted. "If we push him now, it could make it worse." Mr. Barrett stared at me, his eyes hard. "If he can't compete, we'll have to rely on Thunder." I felt a wave of disappointment, both in myself and in the situation. I had come so far, only to be sidelined at the final moment. A spark of hope. That night, as I lay in my stall with my leg bandaged and aching, Sterling leaned over from his stall. "Don't let this break you, Ember," he said softly. "There's more to proving yourself than just winning a show." I nodded, grateful for his wisdom, but a part of me still burned with the desire to prove my worth. Helen visited me late that night, bringing a warm blanket and a treat. "We'll get through this, Ember," she promised. "Even if it's not tomorrow, your time will come." As I rested, her words echoed in my mind. I realized that winning the show was no longer just about pride. It was about resilience, about showing the world that setbacks were not the end. And as the first rays of dawn crept over the stables, I knew that, injured or not, I wasn't finished yet. The true measure. The day of the annual show dawned bright and clear, a perfect day for competition. I watched from my stall as riders led their horses toward the main arena, the sounds of laughter, cheers, and hoofbeats filling the air. I felt a pang of longing. This was supposed to be my moment. But with my legs still tender, Helen and Mr. Barrett had agreed that I was not ready to compete. Thunder, meanwhile, stood proudly as his rider mounted. He caught my eye from across the stable yard, a gleam of satisfaction in his gaze. "It's my time to shine, Ember," he called out, his voice tinged with the smugness of victory. "But don't worry, I'll win it for the stables." I turned away, not wanting him to see my frustration. Sterling, as always, sensed my mood. "This isn't the end, Ember," he reassured me. "Sometimes the greatest victories come not in the arena, but in finding strength when it seems lost." I wanted to believe him, but the ache in my leg was matched only by the one in my heart. I watched the others head toward the showgrounds, a mix of regret and determination welling up inside me. A surprise opportunity. As the morning wore on, Helen came to check on me. "I'm sorry, Ember," she said, stroking my neck. "You worked so hard for this." I nuzzled her hand, trying to let her know I understood. But just then, a commotion broke out near the arena. People were shouting and a crowd had gathered around the paddock fence. Helen craned her neck to see what was happening. "Stay here, Ember," she said quickly, rushing toward the scene. I watched her go, curiosity overtaking my frustration. After a few minutes, she returned, her face flushed with urgency. "Thunder's thrown his rider," she said breathlessly. "He's refused the final jump, and Mr. Barrett is furious." My ears perked up at this unexpected turn of events. Thunder was supposed to be invincible, the star of the stables. I felt a strange mix of empathy and surprise. He had been so confident, yet even he had his limits. Helen seemed to read my thoughts. "There's still time for one more entry," she said, her eyes filled with a spark of hope. "If you're up for it, Ember." My legs still ached, but the fire inside me burned stronger. I pawed at the ground, signaling my readiness. Helen hesitated, then made a quick decision. "All right then, let's do this." The last-minute entry. The crowd murmured with surprise as I entered the arena, Helen riding me with a light touch. The announcer's voice boomed over the loudspeakers. A last-minute entry from Bracken Hill Stables, Ember, ridden by Helen Matthews. The other riders watched, some with skepticism, others with mild interest. But all I could focus on was the course ahead of me. The jumps lined up like silent challenges. I had to prove to myself that I could do it. Injury or not. Helen leaned forward, her voice calm and steady. "Easy now, Ember. You know this course. We'll take it one jump at a time." I felt her confidence flow into me, and I gathered my strength. The first jump was smaller, a simple warm-up. I cleared it with ease, my hooves landing lightly on the ground. A few of the spectators clapped, but I didn't let it distract me. The next few jumps came quickly, each one a bit higher than the last. I felt the strain in my leg, but I pushed through, focusing on the rhythm Helen had taught me. Her words echoed in my ears. Find your rhythm and lift. As we approached the final jump, the one that had caused Thunder to refuse, I felt a surge of determination. It was the highest obstacle, a daunting barrier painted in bright red and white. Helen tightened her hold on the reins just slightly, signaling for a burst of speed. Come on, Ember, she urged. This is it. I gathered all the strength I had left, feeling my muscles coil like springs. And then, with a powerful push, I soared over the jump, clearing it by a wide margin. The crowd erupted in applause, and I landed smoothly on the other side, my heart pounding with triumph. Helen laughed with joy, patting my neck. You did it, Ember. You really did it. A lesson learned. Back at the stables, Mr. Barrett was waiting, his expression a mix of disbelief and admiration. Well done, Ember, he said gruffly. You surprised us all. Thunder stood nearby, his pride wounded but his gaze thoughtful. I misjudged you, Ember, he admitted quietly. It takes more than speed and strength to win. It takes heart. It's not about winning, I replied, my voice steady. It's about trying, no matter the odds. Sterling, watching from his stall, nodded approvingly. I told you, Ember, true strength is not found in a single victory, it's found in the willingness to keep going. I knew now that he was right. The show was over, but my journey was far from complete. There would be more challenges, more moments of doubt and determination. But I had proven something important to myself, that even when faced with setbacks, I could rise again. As the sun set over the stables, I stood quietly in the paddock, feeling a deep sense of peace. The path ahead was still uncertain, but I was ready for whatever lay beyond the fence. I was no longer just Ember, the young horse from Bracken Hill. I was Ember, a competitor, a survivor, and above all, a horse who would always rise to the challenge, no matter how high the jump. A new bond. The weeks after the show felt like a mix of recovery and renewal. My leg, still healing from the sprain, received daily care. Helen and the stable hands took special care to wrap it properly, applying soothing liniments and cold compresses. I was given more time in the paddock to rest, away from the intensity of training. Sterling, ever the wise mentor, kept me company during my quieter days. You did well, Ember, he reminded me often. But now, the most important thing is to rest. Strength will come back, but only if you allow yourself to heal. Despite the slower pace, I felt a sense of accomplishment lingering in the air. The last-minute entry and successful performance at the show had earned me respect among the other horses and the stable hands. Even Mr. Barrett, though still stern, seemed to regard me with a newfound approval. Yet, as the days passed, a new face arrived at the stables, one that would bring unexpected challenges and opportunities. The arrival of Luna. One crisp morning, a trailer pulled into the yard, and the stable hands gathered curiously. Inside was a young mare, her coat dark as midnight with a single star-shaped marking on her forehead. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mix of defiance and fear. Her name, I soon learned, was Luna. Luna was different from the other horses, restless, wary, and quick to back away from any human who approached her. She came from a background of neglect, as some of the stable hands whispered among themselves. I watched her carefully from my stall, recognizing the same fire I had felt when I first arrived, but with an added layer of distrust. They say she's had a rough time, Sterling mentioned one afternoon as Luna was led past our stalls, her hooves clattering nervously against the cobblestones. It'll take time for her to trust anyone. I felt a strange pull toward Luna, a desire to understand her struggle. I knew what it was like to be tested, to feel the weight of expectations and the uncertainty of a new place. So whenever I saw her in the paddock, I made a point to be near, offering a quiet presence. At first, Luna kept her distance, watching me with suspicion. But slowly, day by day, she began to let down her guard. It was in the small moments, a shared nuzzle over the fence, a gentle bump of our noses, that a bond started to form. New challenges, new lessons. Meanwhile, my training gradually resumed. Helen, cautious but encouraging, started with light sessions, focusing on building my strength without overexertion. We trotted through small courses and practiced turns, gradually increasing the difficulty as my leg grew stronger. But Luna was also being trained, though with more difficulty. She bucked and resisted, often refusing even the simplest commands. Mr. Barrett, growing frustrated, considered pulling her from training altogether. She's too wild, he complained to Helen one day. Might not be worth the effort. Helen, however, saw something in Luna that Mr. Barrett didn't. She's not wild, she insisted. She's scared. She just needs more time. One afternoon, as I watched from a distance, Luna was brought into the arena for another session. Her eyes were wide, her movements skittish. The rider, trying to steady her, pulled too hard on the reins, and Luna reared up, throwing him off. Panic filled the arena, and Luna bolted, galloping toward the paddock gate. I didn't think twice. I raced toward her, using my body to block her path. Startled, she skidded to a stop, her breath coming in heavy bursts. I stood still, not making any sudden moves, and lowered my head to show that I meant no harm. "Easy, Luna," I said softly. "It's all right." For a moment, she stared at me, her eyes still wild, but something in my calm seemed to reach her. She took a hesitant step forward, then another, until she was close enough to touch. I nuzzled her gently, offering silent reassurance. The beginning of trust. Helen, who had been watching from the sidelines, approached slowly. "Good job, Ember," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "You're helping her." From that day forward, Luna seemed to open up, if only a little. She was still cautious, still prone to moments of fear, but she now followed my lead in the paddock, keeping close as we moved together. I found a strange comfort in her company, a kind of understanding that needed no words. Sterling watched our growing bond with approval. "It's good to see you helping her, Ember," he said one evening. "Sometimes the strongest bonds are formed not by competition, but by compassion." I knew he was right. While Luna's journey was far from over, I had learned that trust was not always built through victory. It was often found in the quiet moments of patience and kindness. An unexpected offer. A few weeks later, as my strength fully returned, Mr. Barrett approached my stall with a thoughtful expression. "You've come a long way, Ember," he said, his voice softer than usual, "and I think you're ready for more." He explained that there was a regional competition coming up, an event with more prestige than the last. It was a chance not only to showcase my abilities, but to prove that my success at the previous show was no fluke. Helen, who stood beside him, looked at me with a mix of pride and determination. "I know you can do it, Ember," she said. "We'll train together and aim for the top." But as Mr. Barrett and Helen left, I noticed Luna watching from her stall. Her eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and longing. She was not yet ready for competition, but I could sense her desire to prove herself, just as I had. As I settled down for the night, I felt the weight of the coming challenge, but also the excitement of having a goal once again. The competition would be tough, but I had learned something important. It wasn't just about winning. It was about showing the world, and myself, what I was truly capable of. And this time, I wasn't just competing for my own success. I was also hoping to show Luna that even when the odds seemed against us, we could rise together. Rising to the challenge. The days leading up to the regional competition were filled with intense preparation. Helen and I trained harder than ever, focusing not only on my jumps, but on perfecting our rhythm and coordination. I felt stronger, more focused, and determined to give my best. This competition would be bigger than the last, with more skilled horses and riders, but I was ready. Luna, meanwhile, continued her training, though not for competition. Helen worked with her daily, keeping the sessions gentle and encouraging. Luna's progress was slow but steady, her trust in Helen, and in me, growing with each passing day. "Keep going, Ember," Sterling said one morning as I warmed up in the arena. "You're proving not just your strength, but your spirit." I knew he was right. The past months had been filled with challenges, yet they had shaped me into a stronger, more resilient horse. And now, with the competition fast approaching, I felt a deep sense of purpose. The night before the competition. The evening before the competition, the stables were filled with an air of anticipation. Riders checked their gear, stable hands polished saddles, and I was given an extra rub-down by Helen, who made sure I was feeling fit and ready. "You've got this, Ember," she said, her voice filled with confidence. "Just remember everything we've worked on." I nuzzled her gently, grateful for her encouragement. But as I looked across the paddock, I saw Luna standing quietly by the fence, watching the preparations with a mix of curiosity and longing. I walked over to her, sensing her uncertainty. "You're getting better every day, Luna," I said. "You'll be ready for your own chance soon." Luna lowered her head, her voice soft. "I'm not sure if I'll ever be as strong as you, Ember. Sometimes I still feel afraid." I understood her words deeply. I was afraid too once, I admitted, but I learned that bravery doesn't mean never feeling fear. It means facing it, one step at a time. Luna nodded slowly, and for the first time there was a spark of determination in her eyes. "I want to try," she said simply. "Even if it's not in the arena yet, I want to be brave." "You already are," I told her, and we stood side by side as the stars began to appear overhead, each of us drawing strength from the other. The regional competition begins. The competition grounds were vast, filled with colorful banners, bustling crowds, and the sound of hooves clattering against the packed earth. Horses from all over the region had gathered, each one fit and ready to compete. I could feel the energy in the air, an electric mix of excitement and tension. As Helen and I prepared for our event, I caught sight of Mr. Barrett speaking with a group of officials. He seemed confident, but there was a hint of nervousness in his stance. "We need a strong performance today, Ember," he said as he passed by. "Let's show them what you're made of." The course was challenging, with high jumps, tight turns, and a demanding pace. But I felt ready. Helen mounted with her usual calm, and as we entered the arena, I could hear the crowd's murmurs of anticipation. "We've got this, Ember," Helen whispered. "Let's do our best." The starting signal sounded, and we surged forward. I felt the wind rush past my ears, the ground firm beneath my hooves. The first jump came up quickly, but I cleared it smoothly, my muscles strong and steady. Each obstacle was a new test, but I moved with confidence, my mind focused on Helen's cues and the rhythm we had worked so hard to perfect. We were nearing the end of the course when I saw the final jump, a tall, intimidating oxer that had already caused problems for several riders before us. My heart raced, but I remembered Sterling's advice. True strength isn't found in a single victory, it's found in the willingness to keep going. With a burst of energy, I gathered myself and soared over the jump, clearing it with room to spare. The crowd erupted in applause, and Helen laughed with joy. "You did it, Ember. You really did it." A victory earned. As we trotted back to the stables, Mr. Barrett met us with a wide grin. "Well done, Ember," he said, clapping Helen on the shoulder. "That was a performance to be proud of." The judges announced the results soon after, and to my surprise, we placed second, an impressive achievement in such a competitive field. Helen's face beamed with pride, and I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. But my victory wasn't just for me. As I returned to the paddock, I saw Luna waiting, her eyes wide with admiration. "You were amazing, Ember," she said. "You didn't seem afraid at all." "I was," I admitted. "But I remembered what you said. You wanted to be brave, and so did I." Luna nickered softly, a sound filled with a new kind of resolve. "Maybe one day, I can try too." "You will," I assured her. "And when that day comes, I'll be cheering you on." An unexpected decision. As we settled back into our routine at the stables, I noticed a change in Mr. Barrett's demeanor. He seemed more relaxed, more open. One afternoon, as he and Helen discussed the next season's competitions, he looked over at Luna, who was grazing nearby. "She's coming along well," he remarked. "Maybe, with a bit more time, she could be ready for her own event." Helen's eyes brightened. "I think she's closer than you realize, Mr. Barrett. She just needs more confidence and maybe a little inspiration." Mr. Barrett nodded thoughtfully. "Well, if she's willing to try, we'll make sure she has the chance." The idea of Luna competing one day filled me with a sense of hope. She had come so far already, and I knew she had the potential to shine, just as I had. A promise for the future that night, as the moon cast a silver glow over the stables, Luna and I stood side by side once more. "Thank you, Ember," she said softly, "for believing in me." "I always will," I replied, nudging her gently, "and no matter what comes next, we'll face it together." It wasn't just a promise, it was a bond. One forged in patience, trust, and the unspoken understanding that we were stronger together than apart. The road ahead would be filled with new challenges, but I knew that, whatever happened, I had a friend beside me. And as the wind rustled through the trees, I felt a sense of peace. A reminder that the true measure of a horse wasn't found in ribbons or trophies, but in the spirit to keep rising, no matter the height of the next jump. A new path. The crisp morning air held the promise of change. It had been a few weeks since the regional competition, and while the routine at Brackenhill Stables had resumed, I sensed a new energy among the horses and riders. Mr. Barrett was pleased with my performance, and he began speaking to Helen about entering more prestigious events. Meanwhile, Luna's progress was becoming undeniable. Her once wary eyes were now filled with a tentative curiosity, and her steps, once skittish, had become more assured. I often found her beside me in the paddock, her head held higher, her stride longer. It was as if a new confidence had awakened inside her. One afternoon, Helen approached us with a thoughtful expression. "Ember, Luna," she began, her voice filled with both excitement and seriousness, "there's a training program starting soon, a camp for young horses looking to compete. It's not just for experienced horses like Ember, but for those like Luna who are still finding their footing. I want both of you to go." I perked my ears, intrigued by the opportunity. Luna, however, looked nervous. "Do you think I'm ready?" she asked, her voice uncertain. "You are," I assured her, nudging her gently. "And I'll be there with you, every step of the way." Luna's gaze softened and she managed a small, determined nod. "Then I'll try." The training camp begins. The training camp was located in a sprawling facility beyond the familiar hills of Bracken Hill. It was a world unto itself. Miles of open fields, multiple arenas, and a mix of seasoned trainers and eager young riders. Helen traveled with us, her excitement palpable. As we entered the main yard, we were greeted by the camp's head trainer, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a commanding presence. "Welcome to Wingate Training Camp," she announced. "Here, we focus not just on competition, but on building trust between horse and rider." Her words resonated with me, but Luna was still on edge. I could sense her anxiety as we were led to our temporary stalls. "It's okay," I whispered to her. "This is just a new step, like all the others." Luna nodded, but I could tell she was still nervous. "It's just, everything is so big here," she admitted. "It's big," I agreed, "but it's also an opportunity. And remember, you're not alone." The first lesson. The first day of training began early. We were split into groups based on skill level. I was placed with the more experienced jumpers, while Luna was assigned to the beginner group, where the focus was on basic skills and building trust. I watched from across the arena as Luna faced her first challenge, stepping over a small series of ground pulls. It was a simple exercise for most horses, but I could see the hesitation in her movements. Helen was there, guiding her patiently, but Luna seemed overwhelmed by the new environment. "Come on, Luna," I called from my side of the fence. "You can do it." She glanced over at me, her eyes wide. "I'm trying, Ember," she said, her voice shaky. "Don't think too much," I advised. "Just focus on one step at a time." With a deep breath, Luna took a cautious step forward, then another, until she had crossed the poles. Helen rewarded her with a gentle pat and a smile. "Good job, Luna," she said. "You're making progress." The days that followed were filled with a mix of successes and setbacks for both of us. I focused on improving my speed and precision, tackling more complex jumps, while Luna worked on her confidence. Sometimes she stumbled, sometimes she balked, but each time she got back up, a little braver than before. A new rival. As the camp continued, I noticed a new horse among the jumpers, a sleek black stallion named Onyx. He was powerful, fast, and undeniably talented. His rider, a young man named Ryan, was competitive and ambitious, constantly pushing Onyx to his limits. Onyx seemed to take an immediate interest in me, but it wasn't a friendly one. "You're the one who placed second at the regionals, right?" he asked, his tone challenging. "Yes," I replied calmly. "Second isn't bad," Onyx continued, "but I'm here to win. I hope you're ready for some real competition." I felt a spark of competitiveness, but I kept my response steady. "Winning isn't everything," I said. "It's about giving your best." Onyx snorted, his eyes gleaming with confidence. "We'll see about that." His words were meant to intimidate me, but they only fueled my determination. I knew that the path ahead was not just about proving myself to others. It was about pushing my own limits, both for myself and for Luna, who watched my every move with admiration. Luna's breakthrough. One afternoon, a special exercise was introduced for Luna's group, a small course with a few low jumps. I watched as Luna's ears flicked nervously, her steps uncertain. Helen, sensing her hesitation, gave her a reassuring pat. "Just try," she encouraged. "It's not about perfection, it's about progress." Luna took a deep breath and approached the first jump. She paused, her body tense, but then she seemed to remember everything we had talked about. The importance of facing fear, of trying despite uncertainty. With a sudden burst of resolve, she leapt over the jump, clearing it by a small margin. The trainers cheered and Helen's face lit up with pride. "Well done, Luna." I felt a surge of pride as well, and I called out to her, "See? I knew you could do it." Luna's eyes shone with joy, and she trotted back toward the starting line, her confidence visibly growing. "I did it, Ember," she said, almost in disbelief. "I really did it." "You did," I agreed, "and you can do even more." A test of heart. As the camp's final day approached, a friendly competition was organized among the horses. It wasn't about ranking, but about demonstrating what each horse had learned. Helen signed me up for the advanced jumper category, while Luna was entered in the beginner's trust-building event. The day of the competition arrived, and I was filled with a mix of excitement and resolve. My event came first, and I found myself facing Onyx once again. As we both lined up, he shot me a confident glance. "Let's see what you've got," he challenged. I responded with a determined nod. The course was difficult, with sharp turns and high jumps, but I felt ready. With Helen guiding me, I cleared each jump smoothly, maintaining a steady pace. Onyx, however, was fast and daring, pushing the limits of each obstacle. In the end, I placed just behind Onyx, but I felt no disappointment. I had given my best, and that was enough. Next, it was Luna's turn. As she approached the simple course of pulls and small jumps, I could see her nerves return. But this time there was also a glimmer of determination in her eyes. "You've got this, Luna," I called out from the sidelines. Just be brave. With a deep breath, Luna started the course. She stumbled at first, hesitating at the second jump, but then Helen's voice reached her, steady and calm. Trust yourself, Luna. Something shifted in Luna. She lifted her head, gathered her strength, and cleared the remaining jumps with a newfound confidence. The crowd cheered, and Helen hugged her tightly. I knew you could do it. Luna trotted back to me, her eyes shining. I did it, Ember, she said, her voice filled with wonder. I really did it. You did, I replied, my heart swelling with pride. And it's just the beginning, a new beginning. As we left the training camp, I felt a sense of accomplishment, not just for myself, but for Luna as well. We had both faced our fears and found a new kind of strength. Thank you, Ember, Luna said as we settled back into our stalls at Bracken Hill. You helped me find my courage. You had it all along, I replied. Sometimes we just need a friend to remind us. The journey was far from over. There would be more competitions, more challenges, and more moments of uncertainty. But I knew now that we were stronger together than apart. And as the sun set over the familiar fields of Bracken Hill, I felt a deep sense of peace, a reminder that true victory wasn't just about winning. It was about finding heart, trust, and friendship along the way. The storm approaches. The weeks after the training camp were marked by steady progress. Luna's confidence continued to grow, and I felt more in tune with Helen than ever before. Our training sessions became more advanced, filled with new techniques and increasingly complex jumps. Luna, though still in the early stages of her development, was now able to clear low jumps with ease. Her once timid steps were now steady and sure. Sterling, always the wise observer, watched us with quiet pride. You've come a long way, both of you, he remarked one crisp morning as Luna and I practiced side by side in the paddock. We've still got a lot to learn, Luna replied, though her voice carried a hint of excitement. You're learning quickly, I added, and soon, you'll be ready for the real competitions. Luna's eyes brightened at the thought, but I could see a lingering doubt in her gaze. I hope so, she said softly. The invitation one evening, as the stables settled into a calm quiet, Helen came to my stall with a letter in her hand. Her face was a mix of excitement and apprehension. Ember, Luna, she said, glancing between us. We've received an invitation to compete in the Silver Meadows Invitational. The Silver Meadows Invitational was one of the most prestigious events in the region, known not only for its challenging courses, but for its selective entry. Only horses with demonstrated talent and promise were invited, and it was considered a milestone for any competitor's career. I felt a surge of excitement. This was a chance to prove myself among the best. But when I looked over at Luna, I saw a mix of hope and fear in her eyes. Do you think I'm ready, Ember? She asked quietly. You've come this far, I replied gently. You're stronger than you think. Helen seemed to sense Luna's uncertainty too. We don't have to compete if you're not comfortable, Luna, she reassured her. But I believe you're ready for this step. Luna hesitated, then nodded slowly. I want to try, she said. I'm scared, but I won't let that stop me. The journey to Silver Meadows. The journey to Silver Meadows took us farther from Bracken Hill than I'd ever been. The landscape changed from familiar rolling hills to vast open plains and winding roads that led to the sprawling grounds of the competition venue. Silver Meadows was breathtaking, a vast estate with manicured fields, grand arenas, and rows of brightly colored tents. As we arrived, the buzz of preparation filled the air. Horses of all breeds and sizes were being groomed, riders were fine-tuning their equipment, and trainers were making last-minute adjustments to schedules and strategies. The course itself was daunting. It featured towering jumps, tight turns, and water obstacles designed to test even the most experienced horses. For Luna, it represented the biggest challenge of her young career. I could see her staring at the jumps, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and trepidation. Just remember what we've practiced, I told her. It's just one jump at a time. Luna nodded, though I could tell she was nervous. I'll try, she whispered. The first round. The first round of the competition arrived quickly. Helen and I were set to go first, competing in the advanced jumper category. As we entered the arena, I could feel the energy of the crowd, eager, expectant, and intense. Stay calm, Ember, Helen whispered. We know this course. The starting bell rang, and we launched forward. Each jump came faster than the last, but I felt a strong sense of focus. We cleared each obstacle smoothly, maintaining a steady rhythm. When we reached the final jump, a massive triple bar that towered above the others, I gathered all my strength and sailed over it, landing cleanly to a wave of applause. Helen beamed with pride as we trotted back to the paddock. Great job, Ember, she said, her voice filled with joy. You were amazing. But as I caught sight of Luna, I saw the tension in her stance. Her event, the beginner's trust-building round, was next. I walked over to her, nuzzling her gently. "You've got this, Luna," I said. "Just focus on what we've practiced." She nodded, taking a deep breath. "I'll try my best." Luna's turn. Luna entered the arena with Helen by her side, her ears pricked forward and her steps cautious. The course was simpler than mine, low jumps, ground poles, and a small water obstacle. But for Luna, it represented a significant hurdle. The first few jumps went well. Luna cleared them with a careful but confident stride, her movements fluid and controlled. But as she approached the water jump, her pace slowed, and I could see the uncertainty return. "Go on, Luna," Helen urged softly. "You can do it." Luna hesitated, her eyes wide. I felt my heart clench, knowing how much this moment meant to her. "You're brave, Luna," I called out from the paddock. "You can do this." With a burst of determination, Luna surged forward, clearing the water jump with a splash. The crowd erupted into applause, and Helen hugged her tightly. "Well done, Luna," she said, her voice filled with pride. Luna trotted back toward me, her eyes shining. "I did it, Ember," she said, almost in disbelief. "I really did it." "You did," I replied, my heart swelling with pride, "and you were incredible." The storm. As the competition continued, dark clouds gathered in the distance. The weather, which had been clear and warm, suddenly turned ominous. Thunder rumbled, and a sharp wind swept across the grounds. The organizers announced a temporary delay, urging riders to take shelter as the storm approached. Helen led Luna and me to the stable tents where we were secured safely. But the storm was fiercer than expected. Rain lashed the grounds, and strong gusts rattled the tent poles. I felt Luna trembling beside me. "It's just a storm," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "We'll be fine." But Luna's fear was evident. "I've never been in a storm like this," she admitted, her voice shaking. "What if something happens?" "We're together," I reassured her, "and that's what matters." Just then, a sudden crash echoed from outside. A loose board had fallen, causing a nearby tent to collapse partially. Luna reared back in fright, but I stayed close, pressing my nose gently against her neck. "Stay with me, Luna," I urged. "It's scary, but we're safe here." Luna's breathing slowed, and she steadied herself. "Thank you, Ember," she said, her voice still shaky but more assured. A test of trust. The storm passed after what felt like hours, leaving the grounds soaked but intact. The competition resumed the next day, and both Luna and I were able to complete our final rounds. Though neither of us placed at the top, the experience had been more about the journey than the results. Helen was overjoyed. "I'm so proud of both of you," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "You've proven not just your skills, but your heart." As we prepared to leave Silver Meadows, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment, not just for my own performance, but for Luna's courage as well. We had faced challenges both on the course and off, and we had come through stronger. "Thank you for being there for me, Ember," Luna said quietly as we boarded the trailer for home. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You've been brave all along, Luna," I replied. "You just needed to see it for yourself." And as the trailer rumbled down the road, I felt a new sense of purpose. Our journey was far from over, but I knew that together, we could face whatever storms lay ahead, whether in the arena or in life. Home and hope. Returning to Bracken Hill after Silver Meadows felt like coming home. The familiar fields, the scent of the paddock, and the comforting presence of Sterling put us at ease. Despite not winning the top honors, Luna and I had proven something greater to each other and to ourselves. Sterling was the first to greet us. "How was it, young ones?" he asked, his eyes twinkling. "It was challenging," I said, "but worth every moment." Luna nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "I feel different, somehow. Stronger." Sterling smiled knowingly. "You've found your courage, Luna. That's the greatest victory." As the days turned into weeks, Luna's confidence remained steady. She trained with more purpose, her steps sure and determined. And though I focused on preparing for the next major competition, I found myself increasingly aware of Luna's progress, her quiet but steady rise. Then, one morning, Helen approached us with unexpected news. "We've been invited to the Grand Harvest Cup," she announced, excitement in her voice. "It's the biggest event of the year, and I want both of you to compete." I felt a surge of anticipation. The Grand Harvest Cup was one of the most prestigious events, known for its demanding courses and fierce competition. But Luna's eyes widened in surprise. "Me? Compete there?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Yes, you," Helen said warmly. "You're ready, Luna, and I believe you have what it takes." Luna glanced at me, seeking reassurance. "Do you think I can do it, Ember?" "You've come this far," I replied, "and I know you have the heart for it." With that, our training intensified. Luna and I pushed each other, not out of rivalry, but out of a shared desire to be the best we could be. As the Grand Harvest Cup drew closer, I sensed a new determination in Luna, one driven not by fear, but by a quiet confidence. The Grand Harvest Cup. The day of the Grand Harvest Cup dawned crisp and clear, with the scent of autumn in the air. The competition grounds were larger than anything Luna or I had seen before. Flags waved in the breeze, crowds filled the stands, and the courses were set higher, wider, and more intricate than ever. Helen and I were scheduled for the advanced jumper event, while Luna was entered in the beginners competition, an important category in its own right, showcasing young horses with potential. As I prepared for my event, Luna approached me, her eyes bright but a bit anxious. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "This feels bigger than anything I've done." "It is," I acknowledged. "But remember, you're not the same horse who arrived at Bracken Hill unsure of herself. You've earned this moment." Luna nodded, her expression becoming resolute. "I'll do my best." My final round, Helen and I entered the arena for the advanced jumpers, and I felt a mix of anticipation and calm focus. The course was daunting, with tight turns, wide spreads, and a water obstacle at the end that had already caused several riders to falter. The starting bell rang, and we launched forward. Each jump was a test, demanding speed, agility, and precise timing. I felt Helen's cues clearly, and we moved as one. I cleared each jump smoothly, landing with power and grace. The final obstacle, the water jump, loomed ahead, but I was ready. I leapt with all my strength, soaring over the wide spread and landing cleanly. The crowd erupted into applause, and Helen patted my neck as we slowed to a trot. "You were perfect, Ember," she whispered, her voice filled with pride. Luna's defining moment. As I cooled down, I watched Luna's event begin. The beginner's course was simpler, but still challenging enough to test the young horse's trust and skills. Luna entered the arena with a steady stride, her eyes focused and determined. The first few jumps went smoothly. Each leap was confident, each landing secure. But as she approached a daunting oxer, one of the highest jumps in her category, I saw her hesitate. I called out from the sidelines, my voice filled with encouragement. "You've got this, Luna. Just trust yourself." Luna's ears flicked back toward me, and I saw a spark of determination in her eyes. She gathered herself and surged forward, clearing the oxer with room to spare. The crowd cheered, and Luna's face lit up with joy. Her final jump was a combination, two fences in quick succession, requiring agility and quick thinking. She paused briefly, then pushed forward, clearing both obstacles in a fluid motion. The crowd's applause was thunderous, and Helen ran to meet her as she exited the arena. "You did it, Luna," Helen said, hugging her tightly. "You were amazing." Luna trotted toward me, her eyes glowing with pride. "I did it, Ember," she said. "I really did it." "You did," I replied, my heart swelling with joy. "And I couldn't be prouder." The unexpected offer. The award ceremony was a mix of excitement and disbelief. I placed third in the advanced jumper category, an achievement I was proud of given the level of competition. But the real surprise came when Luna was announced as the winner of the beginners category. Her performance, marked by resilience and grace, had impressed the judges. Luna stood beside me, still in shock. "I won, Ember," she whispered, as if trying to make sense of it. "You earned it," I said simply. "This is just the beginning for you." As the event wound down, a man approached Helen and Mr. Barrett. He was a renowned trainer, known for working with top-level competitors. "I saw your horses today," he said, nodding toward Luna and me. "They have great potential. I'd like to offer advanced training opportunities for both." Helen's eyes widened with excitement, and Mr. Barrett considered the offer thoughtfully. "It's a big step," he said, looking at Helen. "Are you both ready for it?" Helen glanced at Luna and me, her voice steady. "Yes," she said, "we're ready." A new beginning. Back at Bracken Hill, preparations for the advanced training program began. It was a chance to reach new heights, but it also meant facing new challenges. The training would be intense, demanding not only skill but also mental toughness. Luna, now filled with a quiet confidence, looked at me one morning as we grazed in the paddock. "I'm ready for whatever comes next, Ember," she said, "and I'm glad you'll be with me." "Always," I replied. "We've come this far together, and we'll keep moving forward." Sterling, watching from nearby, nodded approvingly. "You two are an inspiration," he said warmly. "Never forget that it's not just about reaching the top, it's about the journey you take to get there." Luna and I smiled, knowing that our story was still unfolding. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with new obstacles and higher jumps. But we also knew that we had found something greater than victory. Friendship, trust, and the courage to rise, no matter how high the challenge. Epilogue. A journey fulfilled. Years passed, and Luna and I became regular competitors in major events. We won our fair share of ribbons, and we lost some too. But each experience, whether marked by triumph or setback, deepened our bond. Helen remained our constant guide, always reminding us of the lessons we had learned along the way. Lessons of resilience, patience, and the power of believing in one another. Luna, once a scared and uncertain mare, became a confident competitor, earning a reputation for her grace under pressure. As for me, I had learned that strength wasn't just about physical ability. It was about heart, trust, and the willingness to keep rising, no matter what. And as we stood together at the fence one evening, watching the sun set over Bracken Hill, I knew that our story wasn't just about winning. It was about the journey, the friendship, and the courage we had found in each other. It was about two horses who, against all odds, had discovered the true meaning of strength, not in trophies or titles, but in the simple, enduring bond of trust. Together we had risen, and together we would keep moving forward, one stride, one jump, one dream at a time.